In the automotive world, Tesla is like a roller coaster. They go through their ups and downs, and you can thank their still CEO, Elon Musk, who is very notorious for his unpredictability and his impulsiveness. Now, thankfully, Tesla has always built a really great product, and they are literally responsible for changing the way we think of an electric car. And today, I brought along a 2015 Tesla Model S. This is the electric car that changed everyone's perception because it was the first one that could actually go over 200 miles on a full charge. So if you guys are looking to purchase a used electric car, is a pre-owned 2015 Model S worth the look? That's what we're here to find out. So I'm probably the last person on YouTube to actually film a Model S. If you guys remember, this car came out way back in 2012, and the look didn't really change until 2017. This, as you can see, is a 2015 model, so it has the original front end look. Now, I actually have this car because the Model 3 Performance that Redline has in the long-term fleet is at the Tesla store for another week, so they gave me this to drive, which has about 34,000 miles. And you can see the look will still be instantly recognizable as a Tesla. Now, unlike the refreshed model, these are only by xenons. You do have an LED running light, an LED turn signal, but Tesla has upgraded the headlights to full LEDs on the refresh models, and you still get LED fog lights down here on this pre-refresh model. And overall, I think the car looks great, aside from the fake grille, which I actually used to prefer this look, but now that the pre-refresh model came out with the grille-less face, I think it actually suits the car better. I just think in an electric car like this, you don't really need a grille because there's nothing to cool. Really, there's no internal combustion engine that needs to suck in air. So it's kind of good that Tesla did away with that. Now, the actual size of the Model S is a lot larger than the Model 3. This car at 117 inches long in the wheelbase is about 4 inches longer, and at 196 inches long, this is about 12 inches longer, so a foot longer than the Model 3. This is, by all measures, more of a full-size sedan in between a full and a mid-size car, which is why a lot of people prefer this still, because it has a little bit more space. Now, these are the 19-inch wheels that come standard on this vehicle. This is the 70D model, if you guys remember where it fits in the hierarchy. This was new in 2015. These wheels are definitely much better looking than what you get on the refresh models, in my opinion. You guys can still option in a 21-inch wheel back at the time, which again had a little bit of a different design. Now, this vehicle has a very traditional looking sedan shape, which kind of surprised me. When this car first came out, I was expecting Tesla to kind of go with more of a space age type design. They didn't really need to, because I think that the sales success of this car have really akin to the actual design of this vehicle. Now, the one thing about Model S's that made them so popular is the fact that these are rear drive to start, as opposed to front wheel drive like a lot of its competition. Now, at the rear of the vehicle, you can see it's a very clean design again. It's aged very well because the pre-refreshed model, or the refresh model, hasn't changed the actual look. And then, as with every other electric car, there's no exhaust tips, there's no internal combustion engine. But what I really like about the Model S is this lift gate here, because it is actually a hatchback. It's one of the reasons that makes this vehicle so successful and practical, because with the seats up, you're looking at around 26 cubic feet of space. That's roughly what you get, the same sizes that you get in a lot of subcompact SUVs and approaching compact SUVs. Now, if you fold down the rear seats here, Tesla quotes at around 58 cubic feet of space. That is huge, especially when you consider the fact that it looks like a sedan on the outside. I also really like the fact that Tesla gives you this nice little storage area underneath the floor here that gives you a little bit more space. And then, because the engine, there is no engine in this vehicle, you actually do get a frunk with this car, which if you have the key fob on you, you can basically use the key fob here and then open up the frunk area with just a double tap of this button here. It's not really a button, it just actually looks like it's part of the hood. And then when you open this up, this is considerably smaller because this is the dual motor version. The space is pretty unusable if you guys are planning to put large things, but if you want to kind of just hide a few things here, it is a nice place to actually store stuff in the front of the vehicle. So unlike the Tesla Model 3, which just comes with a key card, the Model S still actually includes a key fob for the vehicle. It's not very traditional in the sense that there are actually no buttons on the key fob. It just kind of looks like a car. Tesla kind of copied copied the design of this from Porsche, but it is a very nice key. It's very light, very small, and if you want to lock the door from the key fob, you can. Just double tap this button, or tap this once, it'll lock the doors for you. Or the car also has an automatic lock and unlock function. As you approach, it'll unlock. If you want to unlock it, just double tap it. That'll unlock the doors for you. You can see the door handles pop out. If you want, you can also tap the back of the vehicle twice. It'll open up the rear cargo area, or you can double tap the front. It'll open up the actual front, the frunk of this vehicle. If you want to close it, you can just tap that again. But you don't even need to fiddle with this. All you have to do is just keep the key fob near you as you approach the vehicle. It'll sense the key is there, and then it'll have the door handles pop in and out. Again, this one already did that, which is why the door handles are open. Unlike the Model 3, I do like the door handles on this vehicle because they don't require you to have to stick your finger there and open the door handle. It does it for you automatically. Now, looking at the interior of this particular Model S, it does have the beige interior option, which I'm not really a fan. I don't think it matches really well with the gray exterior of this particular one. The leather seats, you can see this is 34,000 miles of wear. And for the most part, they have held up well, although the leather doesn't really feel all that nice. It kind of feels a little bit more like vinyl as opposed to the premium leather that I've seen in some of the newer Tesla models. But overall, it's still going to really impress you with the size of the screen, the way it looks. Has it aged well? Yes and no. This one is a loaner car. It's been beat to hell, so I'm gonna give it a little bit of an excuse. But getting inside the vehicle, you can see the Model S definitely has that traditional car feel, and unlike the Model 3, you're going to notice that the view out of the front is definitely not as good. The dash is much higher, the windshield's a little bit smaller. This one doesn't have the self-closing doors like the Model X, so you have to grab this area here and then shut the door, which doesn't sound all that solid, if I'm being honest, when you shut the door. This is a really strange design. Your actual grab handle is over here. This is the door handle. It's just a traditional door handle there. That feels really nice and sturdy, which is nice. But when you shut the door, I wish it sounded a little bit nicer. Now, looking at this interior of the Model S, can't believe this is a 3-year-old car. Honestly, this is a 6-year-old car because this is what the interior looks like, or looked like back then. And it still, still looks very impressive today. This is the largest screen in the industry. It's a 17-inch display, tablet-style display, which is really nice. I love how you can basically show everything on this screen here. And there are no actual hard buttons on the dash here, but we'll go into that in just a second. Now, if you want to start the vehicle up, just like the Model 3, there's no button here or key to turn. You just put your foot on the brake with the key fob inside the vehicle. It'll start beeping, and that, in a sense, will turn the vehicle on. And this is how you know the vehicle is ready to drive. Now, looking at the actual materials, this one has the premium upgrades on the interior, which I believe were $5,000 back then. So you do have suede Alcantara with real stitching on this dashboard here. You have this real olive or open pore wood, which is nice. You have leather down here. And this portion, this button here opens up the glove compartment, which is actually a pretty good size. It's damped, it's lined with felt. Like how it's actually a traditional button. Your hazard switch is over there, which is also nice. It's a traditional button. On the door panel here, you can see it's soft touch on this upper portion, although it's not stitched. It is stitched down here and down here, which is nice. This switchgear should look familiar. It's literally out of a FCA or Mercedes product. The windows are one-touch express up-down for all four. I really like how Tesla developed their own switchgear on the Model 3. This is probably the most dated aspect of this car, is seeing this old switchgear, because Mercedes has moved away from this switchgear while FCA is still using it, so it looks a little bit cheap. The switchgear on the steering wheel for the wiper controls are also from Mercedes. The transmission selector is also from Mercedes. And then down here you have your power tilt telescoping wheel. And then this is for the Autopilot to actually activate it and adjust the distance and whatnot. This, again, all comes from Mercedes. So this is probably where you're going to notice the part sharing and the fact that it's a little bit older. Now, the center screen here, or in the instrument panel, is really nice. I actually wish the Model 3 had this, although some people really like the, all clean dash layout. It definitely makes the Model 3 have a better view out of the front than this, but I think that Tesla does a really great system here where it'll show the GPS information there, or your music. Speed is there. It'll show the Autopilot over there, and then your trip computer information. You can also kind of change and show all different kind of displays there from the steering wheel controls. The steering wheel itself, by the way, is slightly different versus what you find in the Model 3. I do like the flat bottom design, and then you have your traditional buttons over here for your audio, and then your voice commands and whatnot over here. Now, going to the center stack here, I'm going to take some time showing this because this is essentially what it's going to look like most of the time. If you'd like, you can push this little area right here. You can flip-flop the orientation where you can have the GPS down there, or if you want, you can just push that there and it'll make the GPS the entire screen, which is massive. It's huge. It is basically Google Maps. Really nice. Love this display. Although I will say that the actual graphics of the display don't look quite as crisp and clean as what you see on the newer infotainment system in the Model 3. Now, Tesla always said this car has been widely known to have over-the-air updates, and I believe this one's running on the latest software, but to me, the actual resolution of the screen doesn't look as crisp and clear as my Model 3. Going back here, you can see there is just basically FM radio, and then your streaming, and then your Bluetooth audio connections. There's no satellite radio in this one, no AM radio, which is fine by me. I love the streaming services that Tesla offers in this car because it has a 4T LG, an LTE hotspot in here, so you basically have a computer. The one thing this car does offer you is web browser. You can't do this in a Model 3. I kind of wish you could, although I really wouldn't recommend doing this when you're driving. So that's something to keep in mind. The backup camera, you can see no 360 camera on this car still, but it has a really great crystal clear backup image. It's got front and rear parking sensors, which is great. This vehicle also will automatically parallel park itself. It's got the summon feature because it has the enhanced autopilot. Pushing this over here will show your actual consumption, your energy consumption. This, to me, doesn't really mean much. Everyone really just wants to know the range of this car. And as I said, 240 miles of range. In the real world, I was roughly getting that, although the car's computer was telling me a maximum of 288 when the car had a full charge. So that was definitely very interesting when I was trying this vehicle out on its actual range. Now, I like with every other Tesla model, if you want, you can just push this right here. It'll show you all your nearest superchargers. Whenever you put a destination in the actual GPS, it'll show superchargers along the way. This vehicle in general, when you go to the controls, the actual charging of this vehicle is the lower 40 amp current. The refreshed Model S's will have been upgraded to a 48 amp. This is the max that you can get. Again, it's one of the reasons why you want to particularly go for the newer model, as it gives you slightly faster charging. I found that on the supercharger, you know, it took about 45 minutes to reach a full charge. If you guys just use the regular charger, it's going to take over 30 hours. Tesla says around 8 hours to charge fully on a level 2, which is what most of you are probably going to be doing. Now, when you go to the controls here, you can see your sunroof control is actually right here on the screen. There's no physical hard button here. If you want to open it, just kind of slide that up forward. You can see the glass roof opens. This is a $2,000 option back in the day. Although I don't like the squeaking. I also found that the wind noise can be rather incessant when you guys are trying to open and close this while the vehicle is moving. So my suggestion is just do this when you're actually stationary, although that squeaking definitely doesn't sound really great. I like how Tesla basically allows you to customize how much you want to open and close the sunroof. Definitely a nice feature. Wish the Model 3 offered this, although listening to that squeaking, I'm worried that this is going to break or it's going to leak over time. Going here, you can see your driving. You can change your different driving modes here from chill, acceleration to standard. This is not the P90D back in the day. Of course, you can also adjust the regen braking. The regen braking is not as strong as what you get in the Model 3, which will go later on into the test drive. You can see all your different trip computer information there, your displays and whatnot. You can adjust, you know, you can open up the trunk and the actual charge port, the frunk from here, lock and unlock it. Going to your setting controls here, you can change whether you want to show distance or energy in the battery display, which is nice. You can change the autopilot in here and customize any kinds of speed warnings, turn on the auto steer or the lane departure warning or whatnot. This is very similar to the Model 3, and this basically still looks very modern. I'm starting to get used to the actual layout orientation of the Model 3 as opposed to this. But again, this is still really great. If you want to adjust your volume controls, it's down here. No actual knob, and I'm okay with that simply because Tesla has cleaned up the entire area here, so there's no other knobs. So my brain's kind of been refocused to just teach myself that I'm gonna have to go to the touchscreen here. And for some of you may not like that, for some of you may. You do have 3-level heated seats in this vehicle with a heated steering wheel, which is part of like an optional package. If you want cooled seats, you guys have to go to the performance, so the P90 or P100D back in the day. This is the only Tesla along with the Model X to offer the cooled seats. The Model 3 doesn't offer that. Down here, this big area here is nice to store stuff, although stuff kind of slides around and you can't really cover this. Tesla has updated this to give you a little bit more storage right here, which is what I prefer. There's a little bit of storage right here. There's 2 cup holders here, which these 2 areas slide up where you can cover up. To adjust, this is nice and padded right here. 2 USB ports are right here. There's a 12-volt here. Remember, there's no Apple CarPlay, no Android Auto in any Tesla vehicle. The seats themselves, I find them to be pretty comfortable. They're supportive. The leather itself feels like vinyl. It doesn't feel as nice as what you get in some of the newer Teslas. I do like the suede Alcantara on the headliner and on the dash. And overall, this interior still very much impresses. And really, it's only when you sit inside the Model 3 you're going to notice the dated actual switchgear here that comes from Mercedes. But other than that, most people are going to get in this vehicle, and you're really going to prefer and enjoy a lot of the tech features that this car offers. So being a foot longer than the Model 3, you're probably expecting the backseat of the S to be significantly bigger. And to be honest, when you get back here and shut the door, I really like the flat floor, but the Model 3 offers the same thing. And if you look at the actual numbers, Tesla says that this car has 35.4 inches of legroom. Compare that to the 35.2 you get in the Model 3, so it's technically not much more. What you do get more of is more shoulder room and a little bit less headroom that you get in the Model 3 because of this actual roof panel is not quite as high. But this back seat is very usable. You can see very good legroom. There's no storage on the back of the seat back, but you do have rear seat vents back here, no USB charging ports, and then no armrest here. So that really surprised me. Again, this is kind of showing the age of this car. I also don't like the way the seats look. They kind of remind me of like school bus vinyl seats or something you find in a taxi cab. The leather just hasn't really aged well. The materials back here are also soft touch. They're pretty much mimicking the front, but overall, the space isn't significantly larger than the Model 3, so that's something that Tesla needs to work on when they redesign this car whenever they decide to do so. Now, speaking of the powertrain of this vehicle, the 70D model comes with two induction motors, one at the front and one at the rear, so it's all-wheel drive. They each make 257 horsepower at each front ends. Now, if you add the two up, the total output is 514 horsepower, but that's not what it's actually putting out at the wheels. Tesla says this puts out around 329 horsepower at the wheels, and roughly 406 pound-feet of torque, which again, electric motors are all about instantaneous torque. Now, range, that's the big question with electric cars. Tesla says this will go 240 miles on a full charge. If you guys are looking at the 2018 models and up, those will actually do 259 miles because it's a larger 75 kilowatt hour battery. This is a 70 kilowatt hour battery, so slightly smaller, but still very good range considering the fact that most electric cars do roughly half that, at least at this current filming for this video. Now, the MPGe number, that number doesn't really mean much to a lot of people. It's rated at like 101 MPGe, which is about, if you're comparing it to the Model 3, about 15 MPGe less. Just remember, the bigger the number, the higher or the better it is. But remember, this car will do 240 miles of range, which is significantly less than the 310 that you can get on a Model 3, which is roughly the same price as this car if you guys are going to compare it. But with a single speed reduction gear with all-wheel drive, let's get out on the road and see how it all performs. All right, so I am literally the last person on YouTube to be reviewing a Model S, and to be honest, I said earlier, I kind of just avoided Teslas for the longest time simply because, you know, they don't hand out press cars. Some of the people who own or are Tesla enthusiasts, they can be a little nutty when you read them in the comments, how they kind of just give the brand so many excuses. But I definitely became a believer of this brand when I first took delivery and drove my Model 3 Performance. But the S has been around for 6 years now, and this is the electric car that started the electric car revolution. Everybody freaks out about Teslas because of the insane acceleration. So this is not the P100D or the P90D for its time. This is just the 70D. Tesla says 0 to 60 in 5.1 seconds. Let's see if that performance is enough. Oh, jeez. The one thing I really appreciate about every Tesla that I've driven, because I will be doing a review on a 2018 Model S75D, but even this 70D, the acceleration is just so instantaneous. Now, it's definitely not as ferocious as the Performance Model 3 that we have, that I've driven and I've reviewed for you guys, but you start to notice the lack of pull on the highway. This is where the car kind of struggles a little bit for horsepower. I mean, it's not slow. This is not slow by any means necessary, but it's definitely not as quick as the performance models that you've driven. But the kind of acceleration that the Model S gives you basically reminds me every time why I think electric cars are going to become the future. And, you know, if you asked me 5 years ago, I would have told you it was a hydrogen vehicle. But now with, you know, the charging infrastructure, how everyone's kind of going on with the electric way, I think this is definitely the future of driving. You can see here, getting up to higher speeds here, this car handles them really well. And honestly, Tesla says the top speed is around 140 miles an hour for this 70D version. I mean, it has over 300 horsepower, 330 to be exact, almost. And this car is plenty powerful for the majority of people. So there's really no need for the performance model. And that's the beauty with these electric vehicles, is there's so much torque, they're so quiet. I mean, getting up to highway speeds in this thing is so eerie. It's like a spaceship when this thing accelerates. Every time you just put your foot down, anytime you go near the throttle, it just takes off. And it basically reminds you that every other brand is a little bit behind in their electric car technology. versus Tesla because they've got the performance down. Now, one thing that Teslas are also very famous for is their enhanced autopilot, which this car has. Unlike the Model 3 where you use the little transmission controller to do it, this car has a little stock that's from Mercedes. You just pull it towards you, and then it turns on the actual steering assist. You can see here, it's going around this sharp corner or curve. I can actually signal left, and it'll turn the wheel and change lanes for me. It doesn't actually turn off the turn signal for you. You have to do that manually. The Model 3 will do that for you. But it's just so incredibly good at driving for you. Now, I will say that this car doesn't have quite as many cameras on the outside as the Model 3, or at least the refreshed ones. So you do notice that it's not quite as precise, and it gets a little confused in these construction zone areas. So I'm going to take over here because there's a construction zone area. But the autopilot in this car, the enhanced autopilot, still works incredibly well. One of the best systems in the business. But as you can see here, the steering in the Model S definitely is not as heavy as the Model 3, but it's very much still sporty. It's quick enough. The visibility in here is a little bit constricted compared to some of the class. Like this dash is definitely a little higher. The view out of the front is a little bit more narrow. You're looking through a more narrow windshield. Same thing with the rear window. But the view out of the side is fine. The ride quality also, this one doesn't have the air suspension. That was an option back then. Tesla made it standard when they refreshed the car. But it still has a pretty agreeable ride. These smaller 19s definitely make it a little bit softer. But it feels appropriately like a luxury car, which is how it should feel. It's quiet, it's smooth, it's powerful, it's torquey. I mean, that's why people who drive Teslas are so crazy addicted to these vehicles, because they can genuinely, replace your internal combustion engine. And I was able to test out the range of this vehicle. I mean, 240 miles is a good amount of range, but I do think that having over 300 is a little bit more preferable. Especially for the majority of people who do go electric. It requires a little bit less stops at the supercharger. I think that Tesla's supercharger network is insanely good, but they do need to work on making it charge a little bit quicker. I mean, 30 minutes to get about 80% charge is great, but I'd like to see them cut that time in half to get 80% charge in about 15 minutes. Now, I'm going to try my best to not make this a comparison between a Model 3 and a Model S, but when you start going around corners, you do feel the bigger size of this vehicle, which is okay. This is in between a mid-size and a full-size sedan, but it does handle the road quite nicely, and the steering also weighs up nicely. This is a surprisingly fun car to drive, and if you've never driven, a Tesla before, I mean, just driving a Model S will kind of make you a big fan of this car right away. All right, my foot is to the floor there. It gets up to speed. I mean, it starts to level off when you pass 60 miles an hour, but this is gonna be plenty fast for the majority of people. Now, on longer road trips, the seats aren't quite as soft. They do feel a little bit more worn out. I really just don't like the material, the feel of this leather. I'm not sure if this is real leather or synthetic leather, but it just feels a little bit more like vinyl as opposed to real leather. In terms of quality and so forth, this one has 34,000 miles on it. I don't really hear too much in terms of squeaks and rattles. The body still feels relatively stiff. There's a little bit of wind noise I'm hearing from the roof panel coming from the sunroof, especially when you go above 70. But I mean, it overall still feels pretty nice. I mean, considering the fact that this is a rental that gets beat to hell, 34,000 miles on it, the rims are curb rash to hell, there's scratches all over the body. I am relatively pleased with this car. I'm just looking forward to seeing what Tesla does to the Model S when they finally redesign it. It is in need of a redesign. I mean, even though Tesla can offer over-the-air updates, I mean, the Mercedes switchgear in here, the FCA switchgear needs to go. This screen here, I love the screen. It's a big size, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them go with the orientation that's in the Model 3 next, and then get rid of this screen over here. Although Tesla needs to work on offering a head-up display. I'm surprised they don't offer a heads-up display. That would be great. But overall, this is still a really pleasant car. As a used car, something that you can get for under $50,000 if you guys look for the older ones. I think you can get these as cheap as like 30 grand if you guys go for like the early ones. Just keep in mind, some of the ones probably had their batteries replaced. This car does come with an 8-year, 100,000 mile electric motor and battery warranty, which is definitely going to be useful. But I'm genuinely surprised at how well this one has held up over the last 3 years and 35,000 miles. Now, just like the Model 3, this car does have the regen braking, which you can adjust the strength of it. This one, I have it in just a standard setting, and it's definitely not as aggressive. But it's definitely very useful. I love the one pedal driving effect that you basically have. Like as soon as I lift off the throttle, the car starts to slow down for me automatically, and it also recaptures the kinetic energy from the brakes. That little rumble that you heard there is from the lane departure alert. If you cross the lane without signaling, the car will kind of beep and vibrate the wheel. Not quite as subtly as the newer Teslas that I drive in the Model 3, but still very nice. And I can easily see why people, will replace their gas car with this. It's just so refreshing to not have to think about gas. I don't have to put gas in this thing. Like I took this car on a 100-mile round trip back and forth to, out into the country, and it used a little over 50% of the charge. But I brought it home after that. I just plugged it in. It had a full charge when I left for the trip, and it was 50%. I just recharged it when I got home the next day. It had some charge back. Although I am still trickle charging the car. I think once you actually have the level 2 installed in your house, and that'll take about 8 to 9 hours to charge. That's kind of like the sweet spot, because you essentially just get up every morning, go to work, or go somewhere. You get up to a full charge. You don't have to deal with going to the gas station, dealing with the lines or whatnot at the cheaper gas stations, or dealing with the smell. It's just kind of that new age feeling. And although other electric cars can give you that, they just don't have the sense of community, the supercharger availability, and just the cool factor that Teslas are kind of just graced with. So although Tesla may not have the best business model here in America, what's set them aside, what's given them the reputation that they have today, was excellent products. And the Model S was one of the first vehicles that really put them on the electric car map. For those of you who have never driven a Tesla before, this is a car that quickly converted people to believing that electric cars would easily become the future, because it was the first electric car to have that 200+ mile range, which is honestly what every manufacturer is chasing nowadays with the introduction of new electric vehicles. So after spending the week with this 2015 Model S 70D, how do I feel about the Model S? Well, as you guys saw, it's still a relatively cool electric car. Although the interior has the part sharing from Mercedes, you still have that big touchscreen, you still have an open and airy cabin, you have a usable back seat, you have a huge trunk area, and I tested the range to actually last around 240 miles on a full charge in the real world. Although I feel like it has degraded over time. The car will tell me at times it'll have 280 miles of range, when in reality it's around the 240 mark. In terms of acceleration, Tesla is well known for their quick accelerating cars. This one is no exception, 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. The no noise part is something you're going to have to get used to, but that's kind of the case with every electric car. And really, when you start looking at the price of a used one, that's where this car starts to make a little bit more sense, because this is expensive. Back then, this car was around $80,000. It started at around $76,000. Today, if you want to buy a new 75D, you're going to be spending that same amount of money. Now, if you want to pick one of these used in this similar mileage and year, it's going to cost around $50,000, which is still a lot of money, but it's not that much more expensive than something you're going to pay for like a brand new Chevrolet Bolt, which offers similar mileage, which is honestly the only car that you can kind of compare it to. Although I will say the Tesla Model S is a much cooler looking vehicle. You have more electric charging options. You have the Tesla supercharger network, and it's something that I probably would choose instead of like a brand new Chevrolet Bolt, simply because this is a much more usable car and it's not such a frumpy looking car. But I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on this 2015 Tesla Model S 70D. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, make sure you follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.